Bernie Sanders grills Starbucks or Howard Schultz. And I guess I'll read the caption before, so you know which one is which, because it may not be in exact order. Bernie Sanders unloads on Howard Schultz. So maybe that's not the first one. This is the closing remarks. So okay, we can start here. So Bernie Sanders unloads on Howard Schultz, and that's this first video.
Over the past 18 months, Starbucks has waged the most aggressive and illegal union busting campaign in the modern history of our country. That union busting campaign has been led by Howard Schultz, the multi-billionaire founder and director of Starbucks, who is with us this morning only under the threat of subpoena. Let us be clear about the nature of Starbucks' vicious anti-union efforts. The National Labor Relations Board, NLRB, has filed over 80 complaints against Starbucks for violating federal labor law. There have been over 500 unfair labor practice charges lodged against the company, and judges have found that Starbucks broke the law 130 times across 6 states since workers began organizing in the fall of 2021. These violations include the illegal firing of more than a dozen Starbucks workers for the crime of exercising their right to form a union and to collectively bargain for better wages, benefits, and working conditions. Since the first Starbucks union was certified more than 450 days ago in Buffalo, workers at more than 360 stores across 40 states have held union elections. 83% of these elections have resulted in a union victory, and today nearly 300 Starbucks coffee shops employing more than 7,000 workers have a union, despite Starbucks' aggressive anti-union efforts. But with nearly 300 shops voting to form a union, Starbucks has refused to sign.
So let's talk about what is happening here. So what Howard Schultz, who has been in many depositions and meetings like this, similar to this testimony, well versed with the highest paid lawyers on the planet. This is the tactic, because Bernie Sanders is going to say a whole bunch of shit that he's not going to like, and they can't have him going, what the fuck, no. So because the cameras are going to be on you for your reaction to what Bernie is saying, they go, this is what we want you to do. No reaction. Just look down like you're writing shit. He could be writing, Mary had a little lamb. We have no idea. It's all to distract so that we don't see like a tail or a knee-jerk reaction to what he's doing or what Bernie Sanders is saying. Because he obviously disagrees with what Bernie Sanders is saying. So let's continue with this first clip. A few seconds left.
A single first contract with the union, not a single one. Think about that. Think about a multi-billion-dollar company with unlimited resources, with all kinds of lawyers, advisors, consultants, and yet they have not yet signed one contract with any of their nearly 300 unionized shops.
That is Bernie Sanders. So let me take this off. I was reading that comment, sorry. And then stop right when I started reading it. So let's look at the next clip. That's
over
him.
The past 18 months.
That's him kind of laying the groundwork, or at least talking about some of the egregious things that Starbucks and Howard Schultz has done. So now, that's his closing words. Let's go to this one. Bernie Sanders pressed Howard Schultz to answer a series of questions about his direct role in his union busting efforts that the federal judge and the NLRB ruled were illegal. Schultz repeatedly refused to answer yes or no. So let's watch this
Do
one.
you understand that in America?
Hold on a second here. Yeah, this is the longest of the clips. We can do this one here.
Do you understand that in America, workers have a fundamental right to join a union and collectively bargain to improve wages, benefits, and working conditions? Do you understand that?
I understand, and we respect the right of every partner who wears a green apron, whether they choose to join a union or not.
Are you aware that
Nobody
NLRB
believes
judges
that.
have ruled that Starbucks violated federal labor law over 100 times during the past 18 months, far more than any other corporation in America?
Sir, Starbucks Coffee Company unequivocally, and let me set the tone for this.
He says your corrupt, your judicial system, where, law and order, you have been found guilty over 100 times. And this is his response, is a no response to the 100 times. Because basically he says, the law says we committed a crime, but because we're capitalists and billionaires, we're saying we didn't. And that supersedes, I guess, the truth. Let's listen.
In America.
Sir, Starbucks Coffee Company unequivocally, and let me set the tone for this very early on, has not broken the law.
Okay. Are you aware that on March 1st, 2023, an administrative law judge found Starbucks guilty of, quote, egregious and widespread misconduct, end quote, widespread coercive behavior, and showed, quote, a general disregard for the employees' fundamental rights, end quote, in a union organizing campaign that started in Buffalo, New York in 2021. Are you aware of that?
I'm aware that those are allegations, and Congress has created a process that we are following, and we're confident that those allegations will be proven false.
All right, Mr. Schultz, before answering the following questions, let me remind you that federal law at 18 U.S. Code Section 1001 prohibits knowingly and willfully making any fraudulent statement.
I understand that.
Were you ever informed of or involved in a decision to fire a worker who was part of a union organizing drive?
I was not.
Were you ever informed of or involved in a decision to discipline a worker in any way who was part of a union organizing drive?
I was not.
Have you ever threatened, coerced, or intimidated a worker for supporting a union?
I've had conversations that could have been interpreted in a different way than I intended. That's up to the person who received the information that I spoke to him about.
You show up with brass knuckles and you go, you're taking this the wrong way. What's the problem? You show up with some brass knuckles and it's like you show up with a spiked bat. They might have taken it the wrong way. That's what he's trying to get you to believe. The capitalists. Let's continue.
Were you informed of or involved in the decision to withhold benefits from Starbucks workers in unionized stores, including higher pay and faster sick time accrual?
My understanding.
So, I want to explain this part because unionized versus non-unionized is getting an added benefit. Or, I'm sorry, the non-unionized getting an added benefit that the unionized is not. And this is what the terrible capitalist is doing. He's going, wait, you guys want to unionize, and I can't give you these benefits without, because you have a representation. But he refuses to negotiate a contract. You see what I mean? So Okay, you're right. Let's say, yeah. You wanna fall on that. Now he fails to mention they waived that. The workers in those unionized store waived their rights specifically on the benefit part so that they could get it if he wanted to offer. But he said, "Oh, what do you mean? You want representation?" But at the same time, the representation that would get that, he's refusing to negotiate the contract. You see what the capitalist is doing? But while at the same time saying he's for the workers. Let's continue.
When we created the benefits in May, 1 month after I returned as CEO, my understanding was under the law, we did not have the unilateral right to provide those benefits to employees who were interested in joining a union.
Am I hearing you say that you were involved in the decision to withhold benefits from Starbucks workers in unionized stores? Is that what I'm hearing?
It was my understanding that we could not provide those benefits under the law.
Mr. Schultz, have you ever asked a Starbucks worker, quote, if you hate Starbucks so much, why don't you go work somewhere else?
I'm glad you asked that question because I've read in the press that quote, and that's not exactly what I said. Can I tell the story? Do you mind?
I have some other questions. I'm sorry. There are a lot of people.
I think it's important to hear the facts.
All right, you'll have your chance. Where you personally are accused of breaking federal labor law, something that you have been accused of doing nearly 100 times since 2021.
Mr. Chairman, let me say under oath, these are allegations and Starbucks has not broken the law.
Okay. Mr. Schultz, were you informed of or involved in the decision to close all Buffalo area stores in November 2021, just days before area union elections, in order for Starbucks employees to listen to you give a speech on why they should vote against forming a union, a meeting the NLRB has determined was a violation of the law?
I think this is another area that I hope I get a chance to speak about. For the last 12 months, my involvement, my engagement, and my return to Starbucks has been primarily, I would say 95%, focused on the operations of our business, the customer, domestically and around the world.
Does anybody believe that that's here? I feel like that's a point I don't necessarily have to go in to refute because that's pretty obviously some garbage. So let's continue.
My involvement and engagement in union activities, despite this event today, has been de minimis. I was not involved in any issue of closing stores.
Are you aware, Mr. Schultz, that an administrative law judge ordered you to record and distribute a video of yourself reading a notice to Starbucks employees about their rights under the National Labor Relations Act, how Starbucks violated those rights, and to assure that Starbucks will not infringe upon those rights in the future, and that this notice must be posted in all Starbucks stores and shared digitally to all of Starbucks employees? Are you prepared to read that notice?
No, I am not, because Starbucks Coffee Company did not break the law.
So a judge says you break the law, but this is what capitalists think. What does that have to do with them? I'm a billionaire, and I said I didn't break the law. Case closed.
Under your leadership, Starbucks has repeatedly refused to bargain with any of the 7,000 workers in nearly 300 stores where workers have voted to represent themselves through a union. The first group of workers to win their election have been waiting more than 460 days to reach a first contract. Mr. Schultz, will you commit right now that within 14 days of this hearing, Starbucks will exchange proposals with the union, something it has refused to do for more than 450 days, so that meaningful progress can be made to bargain a first contract in good faith? Will you make that commitment?
Because the arrangement that was made by the union and the NLRB in Buffalo to negotiate one single store at a time. We have met over 85 times for a single store. We've tried to arrange over 350 separate meetings. We've said publicly, and I say it here again, that we believe that face-to-face negotiations is the way to proceed. And the reason I want to make that point is that there have been safety issues in which Starbucks managers have been outed on social media. There are privacy issues. We don't want to do it on Zoom. We are prepared to meet face-to-face on a single store issue.
Will you make a promise to this committee that you will exchange proposals with the union so that we can begin to make meaningful progress?
On a single store basis, we will continue to negotiate in good faith. That's what we'll do.
Let's continue. It's not, you know, a whole lot to add to this nonsense that this guy is saying. It's obvious, but let's change it up. Let's get somebody who's advocating for Starbucks and capitalists. Of course, Mitt Romney, one of the richest Congress people. Let's listen.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman and Ranking Member Cassidy. I recognize at the outset there's some irony to a non-coffee drinking Mormon conservative defending a Democrat candidate.
You mean having class solidarity? Is that what you mean? Because, like you said, you were a Mormon non-drinking. You're a non-coffee drinking Mormon coming to this defense, and yeah, why would you do that? Because it's class solidarity. These capitalists stick together, and workers need to do that too. The same level of class solidarity above everything else.
Candidate for president in perhaps one of the most liberal companies in America. That being said, I also think it's somewhat rich that that you're being grilled by people who have never had the opportunity to create a single job.
So Mitt Romney says, to chime in and says, gives this spiel how he's a Mormon, don't even drink coffee. And then he says all of that just to point out that you guys haven't even created a job like Howard Schultz. Howard Schultz hasn't created a job. This is what capitalists think. They think they're being benevolent. They think they're being like charitable. Listen, I created a job no, you did not create a single job. Demand creates a job, not a supply and demand. We don't need to go into that, but this is what Mitt Romney does here for class solidarity to protect Howard Schultz here. It's significant to me because I don't necessarily see workers doing this, and I surely don't see Congress members doing this for workers in this way. Like, I don't see Mitt Romney, interjecting to defend workers, defend a sanitary worker, defend a Starbucks worker. So let's listen to some more. It's kind of hard. We've only got to 30 seconds of this. It's kind of hard to get through. So I'll try to let it play all the way through.
And yet they believe that they know better how to do so and what's best for the American worker and what's best for the American economy, what's best for growth. I also think it's rich to not recognize the extraordinary conflict of interest we have, which is our Democrat colleagues overwhelmingly get their campaign funds from unions, and therefore would like to find every possible way to extend unions, even if it enterprise feels that it's in.
So Mitt Romney runs cover for his class and capitalists because unions support Democrats. So now he's trying to interject this like this is like a red-blue thing and not a worker thing. I said I was going to try to listen to it. I got through 30 seconds. Let's see if I can get through a minute without stopping.
It's in their best interest to pursue a different course. Now, I know that there are a number of reasons why you might wish not to have union organization in your various enterprises. At the same time, I agree with Senator Cassidy and with your own comments, Mr. Schultz, which is that people have a legal right to form a union. There are some employers that are not good employers, and a union is necessary to protect the rights of those individuals. And that if any enterprise, including yours, has broken the law, that it should be held accountable for having done so. At the same time, there are legitimate reasons why an enterprise might choose not to become unionized. I first would note that within your company, there are probably some stores that are union, some that are non-union. Do the non-union store employees get paid less than the union store employees?
The starting wage has been.
So this is what the capitalist is trying to set up. Does the union does the union stores get paid more or less than the non-union stores? So what they do, let's give them a raise. I remember when this came out, we did a segment. They're giving raises to all the non-union people. So you're asking the question because you know he has set it up that way. It's kind of like retaliation. Oh, you want to unionize? Well, we're giving raises to all these people over here. So now he wants to ask, you see, you unionize and you're getting paid less. So that they can go on Fox News and see, look, unionized workers are getting paid less. So no unions. It's all in an effort to propagandize people that if you use a union, it's not going to get anything better for you. It's not for the good. Let's continue.
Been the same. The only difference is the benefits that we created in May. And my understanding under the law is that we were not allowed to provide those benefits to people who are organizing to join a union.
Let's get to the next video. I think I've been to 3. So let's go to another one. So this is Tina Smith from Minnesota. And let's listen to a couple of her clips here. This is Rep. Tina Smith, or Senator Tina Smith from, I thought I said where it was. Minnesota, yeah. Sorry, so this is a shorter clip. Let's listen to what she says during this hearing.
I've been really struck by your focus on what an excellent company you are. And honestly, it sounds as if you are personally offended or even insulted that anyone would question you or your company. And it seems as if you feel that only bad companies should be unionized, that there's something nefarious about a company that is done something bad and therefore they need to be unionized, and that Starbucks doesn't need a union because you are a good company. But I think, Mr. Schultz, that is not your decision to make. And I believe that there is an inherent value in coming together to organize that would address this imbalance of power that I think the many, many Starbucks
Senator,
partners
right.
sitting behind you and in Minnesota feel. I mean, you're a billionaire and they are your employees. The imbalance of power is extreme. And that is why people want to come together to form a union. I've been really struck by your focus on what an excellent.
And that's a good point. I don't know much about Tina Smith. This is literally the first time I've ever even heard of her. But that is a good point being made here. And there's a second video. Okay, I think it's this one here. Let's listen.
The opportunity to meet with some unionized Starbucks workers from Minnesota, Gracie and Elizabeth, and they tell me that Starbucks is cutting their weekly hours. They estimate that they're losing $4 an hour in wages because the company won't allow them in unionized stores to access credit card tipping when that's available to workers in non-unionized shops. And they tell me that they are simultaneously understaffed in their stores and unable to get enough hours to pay their bills. If these folks are your partners, why are you treating them differently than the non-unionized workers?
When we raised wages in May, my understanding was that under the law,
He
we did
keeps
not
using
have
that
the unilateral
garbage right
right
here.
to provide those benefits to partners who were involved in collective bargaining. And that is why.
So you have said that several times during this
Yeah.
meeting. You've said that you cannot legally provide these benefits without bargaining over them. But you know, I'm sure, that the union has specifically stated in this letter, July 15th, 2022, that they waived any objection to bargaining on this. It says in the letter, to this end, the union hereby waives any objection that we might have to Starbucks providing union
Right. There
represented
you go.
employees with any wage or benefit improvements provided to unrepresented employees. So I don't think this, I just think you're wrong.
Oh, let me try and explain.
Like I couldn't do it. I couldn't sit in a room with a person like this who is clearly a piece of shit, but wants to project like he's helping. Because, like I said, billionaires have this idea that they're being benevolent when they do nothing. Like, he didn't make the coffee, doesn't make the recipe, didn't make the machine, didn't carry the machines in, didn't carry the coffee beans in, nothing. But somehow he believes he created the job. How is that? Fielding workers to exploit is not creating a job. All right, rounding down, I think I got maybe... Okay, here goes Ed Markey. Let's see if we can listen to all of it. I probably have to break some of this up. This is
Thank you, Mr.
longer.
Chairman. And thank you for this important hearing. And Mr. Schultz, it's good of you to show up. But then again, you face little choice. It's disappointing to me that it took such a long time and required the threat of a subpoena for you to appear before this committee. And it's frankly disrespectful to your hundreds of thousands of employees. But we do appreciate you finally appearing here. All across America, workers are saying that they've had enough. Rising inequality and outlandish CEO pay for those at the top, like you, and a paycheck-to-paycheck subsistence for everyone else. The unionizing Starbucks workers are on the front lines as a groundswell of working and middle-class people who are banding together to assert their right to organize, form a union, and collectively bargain for their dignity. My father used to tell me that you can't beg for your rights, you have to tell them. He lost his finger in an industrial accident as a young man. There was no OSHA. He just said, the boss said, see you next week, John, back on the job. That was before unions. That was before rights were put on the books. And ultimately, that's what Starbucks workers are doing. Workers in Buffalo are the spark that's lit the fire of organizing its locations across the country, including 15 Starbucks locations in Massachusetts. The American people are watching. Public support for unions hit a record high late last year with 71% of Americans approving of labor unions. So as you sit here denigrating your workers, you're not just morally and legally wrong, you're in the minority. You're out of touch. Union busting is disgusting. I got the chance this week to meet with Caitlin, who is a Starbucks employee from Gardner, Massachusetts. Like you, Caitlin cares deeply about Starbucks. She originally started working for the company in 2006 and came back to rejoin Starbucks in 2021. When she came back, she saw Starbucks similar to how you describe it in your testimony, a company that had lost its way. She saw a company that now only cared about money at the expense of the health and well-being of its workers. So to help save the Starbucks she once knew and loved, Caitlin and her co-workers formed a union. They wanted to revive a wayward company, make your company better. But you vilified Caitlin and her colleagues for caring. You demonized them for participating in their fundamental right to organize. And worse, you and your company set out to punish Caitlin and her colleagues, withholding benefits and raises, cutting hours, and purposefully understaffing to harm their most dedicated partners. So when you give us 10 pages of testimony.
So you see the tactic when they flash to Howard Schultz again. You saw the tactic of him sort of just looking down. Anytime they know the person is just going to be talking for a long time and a bunch of shit they're not going to agree with, or an assessment they're not going to agree with, that's the strategy that they've been told by their lawyers. So I do want to move on from this. This is actually a bigger story in progressive media. So, of course, you know, all of the Bernie Sanders industrial complex is going to be calling this, you know, tearing down the house, flame throwing. But this is just good because, you know, theatrics is good. To put this capitalist on blast and grill him is good. But that's just it. Like, what else? What is the next thing? What are you putting in motion behind the theatrics? That's the point. So that's my only critique. If it just stays here with just a committee hearing, okay, I guess that's good enough for some people, and it's just not. It's not good enough for me though.